Okay, greetings, brethren. Thank you again for joining us here on Shepherd's Voice magazine. And this was Thanksgiving week. Yesterday was Thanksgiving here in the United States. I grew up in Canada, and Thanksgiving is on a Monday, I believe, in October. Here, Thanksgiving is on a Thursday in November. I think the fourth week, and it's a big deal down here. And Kim and I went out and had some turkey and the usual extras that come with it yesterday, and saw some people that we know, so it was all very good. I rather enjoyed it. It's one of those secular holidays that those who are in the Church of God, as we know it, could share with everybody else without having any concerns or any guilt associated with it. So we get some time off. I had some time off, and I offered Darren. I said, maybe I can do the message this week, and because he wasn't able to pull things, circumstances were that he wasn't able to do something last week. So I said, I'll do something this week, and you can do it next week. So he's got something on deck for us next week for sure. But with all great intensive purposes and all the best efforts, I thought I'd have something even more prepared than this, what I'm about to present. So there may need to be a part 3 here of what I've entitled here, "The Spirit of God Hovered Over the Face of the Waters," and discussing the creation narrative. Otherwise, I hope, for our American friends and those we've been able to reach out to via text, because I had a number of text messages and I responded and reached out to some brethren, happy Thanksgiving, and I hope that it all went well for you. So, with that, let's carry on with this part 2. I think there might be a part 3. There's still some unanswered questions that maybe be floating around, and I just want to kind of continue this on, just continue discussing the narrative a little bit for continuity's sake, and so that we can, stay connected. If we go too many weeks without a message, I know that viewership drops off, and it's not the viewership numbers essentially. We just want to let you know that we want to stay connected, and Darren and I want to stay connected with you, and so we put the effort into this, and to know that you're valued. You're all valued to us. If we hear from you in one way or another, if we don't, that's fine, but you are valued. From this perspective, we're not doing this for any other reason other than we think we have something to offer of value, and that you're valued, and you're valued of God, and then that makes a big difference. So we want to continue along with that attitude, because I truly believe it. I truly believe that. So let's recap a little bit about what we talked last time. If you haven't watched part 1, I encourage you to do so. It goes into more detail of what I'm just about to summarize. Of course, if you're just catching up on the premiere now, then let's just kind of go with it. But in verse 2 of Genesis, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And the reason why I make that part of the title, because the Spirit of God hovering over the face of the waters explains a lot of what the narrative that followed. It's from that perspective, from the Spirit of God's perspective on earth. That point of view is essential to kind of understanding what was going to be described later. Because the Spirit of God is not hovering up in the cosmos. The Spirit of God is there, more personal with the world. And that's from that point of view, these days are discussed, right to the Sabbath day. So it explains the narrative that followed. It is from the earth. And it makes it more personal, as I've come to think about it as well. It connects the Spirit of God with His creation, His very person with his creation on those 6 days. So again, we're kind of recapping. He took the earth from disorder to order. It was all tohu and bohu. It was all disorder and a big mess and darkness. But he brought light into it by the spoken word, and everything he did since then, and just going through that creation narrative, is about bringing disorder to order. He started to make distinctions, day and night, light and darkness, moon and sun, male and female, land and water, among other things. He started to make those distinctions. And so then becomes all this so that his crown of creation, the Sabbath, and human beings can live and prosper, to make an environment for us to live in for his purposes. So let's go to we ended up on day 4. Let's go to day 5 and see what it says here. And God said, verse 20, chapter 1, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that has life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the firmament of heaven." This is the expanse, okay, the atmosphere. "And God created great whales," and some translations say great monsters, but okay, "and every living creature that moves within the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters." It's interesting, God blessed them, saying, be fruitful. He's speaking to this creation. "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth." And the evening and the morning were the 5th day. So again, just to kind of recap, is that word created. When God created the heavens and the earth, it's the Hebrew term bahra. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's the second time it's used since Genesis 1:1. Something new was created. It means no prior existence, or it at least implies that. Now that can create a lot of questions, like the question about dinosaurs, these ancient creatures, and things like that are in the fossil record. I am avoiding that discussion just for now. We may pick it up another time. I don't have sure answers for this otherwise. But again, it goes back to perhaps in Genesis 1:1, between 1 and 2, when the earth became void and in darkness, without form and void. Was there a gap here where there was destruction? I suspect that being the case, but if God really wanted us to understand all this, he would have laid it out. And I wasn't going to go here, but if I've listened to some atheists, Hodgkinson, or I think his name is, very well-spoken atheists that debate, but very articulate atheists who basically the premise of their arguments is to demand explanations for this, and this, and this. Explanations for the evil. And why would God create something to fail? And all these explanations that he demands. And these are the arguments. And I wouldn't want to get into these debates with these guys. But it's not God's purpose to explain everything he's doing, or explain the geological record. It's not what the Bible or the scriptures that have been given to us to do. Surely we'll get those answers, but for the time being, for our purposes and God's purposes, and who he's dealing with and how he's dealing with us, he's not obliged, nor does he feel it necessary to explain everything so that some atheist can be satisfied of all the questions and be told he's wrong. And that's not my job either, and it's not your job either, I think, to go around arguing with atheists and getting on the debate stage to do that. There's a lot of things that are not explained. Where did the serpent come from? What was his history? There's just we can speculate and say we think we know, but it's not there for us to truly understand, because it would take away from the more important aspects of what we're trying to talk about here. All right, I even forgot where I am. Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let fowl multiply on the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. So God brought this into existence. Let's go to day 6. Then God said, in verse 24, let the earth bring forth a living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, each according to its kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, and cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. This is verse 26. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his image, his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Now, I've been reading some insightful thoughts of this, which I want to share. And I only share things I think that are relevant and can be helpful and kind of fill in some blanks and try to help us to make more connections with Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. Verse 26. Go back. Let us make man in our image. Let us make man in our image. Make man. So the word here, verse 26 says, let's make man, Adam. Let's make Adam in our own image. All right, verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. It sounds like it's a repetition, but it's not a repetition. There's a subtle difference here. There's a subtle difference between verse 27 and 26. Make man, and God had created the man. Now we talked about make and created. Make implies something before, but not necessarily. But created says is something very new. So there's a principle that's going on here. In verse 27, it says created Adam, the man. It's not in the translations here. So God created the man in his own image. First of all, there's a plural here, let us, and then God created. So verse 27 says he created the man. Now in your Strong's it'll be the same, but there's actually something different here, and I did check it here in the Hebrew. The man. There's something here. And man in verse 26 is generic. Let's just create man in our own image. It does not in the narrative make humans distinct from the animal world. But the second sense, it makes them distinct. So, but in a sense, that's still true. We're reminded of life that we too are animals. The writer of Ecclesiastes, who I still believe was Solomon, says God reminds us that we're still animals. We still have these behaviors as acting like animals. So we too are reminded in life that we too are animals. And then here it says here in verse 27, so God created the man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. The word created him, the word him here is not really a translatable word. So we don't have to take it as masculine necessarily, but male and female, he created them on this day, Adam and Eve. So in verse 27, I want to point out, God creates the man in God's image, and secondly, male and female. There again is a distinction. So there's something here that is going on. What is all this distinction about? The distinction that is coming through here. The distinction is though we are physical beings and are subject to the environment of the world, we are alone and distinct from animals and all other creatures. We have dominion over them. Man was originally created, in a sense, outside of nature. And here's what is being conveyed here when we go through these these verses. He creates all these animals, unnamed animals, creeping things. But we're not in that spectrum. We're not in that spectrum of all these animals and the things that creep on the earth, the cattle. And we're not part of the whales, the monsters, anything like that. The man, the distinct form of Adam, the Adam, which is both male and female, is distinct in this creation narrative. And if you think about it, when you read this, nature is not sacred. The animals of the world, plants, animals, anything from creeping things to great whales, dolphins, whatever we think that we could see in a higher level form of life. Our own pets, for example, who boss us around, as it happens here. That nature is not sacred. Human life, though, is sacred. Human life is. And if you have any experience like I have had growing up or in my adult life, you may have come across the idea that in your upbringing have been told that nature would be just fine without human beings. Nature would be just fine. Just carry on as it were, and we're the spoilers kind of idea. Human life nature doesn't need us. But not according to the creation narrative. Not according to God, who has done all this. Nature without humans or human life is meaningless. It's just meaningless. So we need to get over this over-romanticizing of nature, because this is how I was taught, and I believed it. But doesn't align with Scripture. God later showed Adam around. He showed him everything that he had done. At least that's what most people believe, and I think that's basically what the Scriptures teach. And it was important to the Creator, God, the Creator, that man would appreciate his work. Because without the man's appreciation, nature would lack value. He created someone, created us to appreciate what he's done. I don't see that animals do. I know that they need it and they see it for support. They do their thing. We see a lot of wildlife in the back here, in the back of the house, wherever others go. But is it appreciated by them? It's just assumed. And it's not something necessarily that we ever would assume. So without human appreciation, connecting with God and what he had done, he saw that it was good. On these days, it would lack meaning and purpose without us. I hope that lands in a soft, lands well. I hope that lands well with you. It needs to be, it's so much so, we see what happens. So much of that, after the fall of man, when they rebelled and they decided they partook of the forbidden tree or the forbidden fruit, got deceived in the story as we know, and that's not going to be part of this series. What is described later in Romans chapter 8, verse 19. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subject to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope. Because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs until now. Now, he says this that we know. I don't know. Maybe that was kind of generally known, but we can see here when he was given dominion over it, when he fell, it brought less meaning to creation. So there was a lot going on there. There was a lot at stake when God created man and said, have dominion. And how man was created essentially outside of nature and was given the breath of the spirit or human soul. So that is a very real situation that is ongoing. And who knows how fully anybody can fully describe all this? Who can truly know it? But there's a distinction, and maybe we'll pick it up again sometime, between Adam and the Adam. Making him and making Adam and Eve distinct in nature. And argument can be made, unless humans rule over nature, nature will destroy the humans. There was an order that was created there that's been disrupted. As I said, from disorder to order. Everything that God was doing there was making order. Order, order, order. In the world today, and we can always tell when someone is creating these games about making distinctions between male and female, they're trying to drive towards disorder with all their games. And what really defines a female, what really defines a male, and all these things that I'm sure all of you are very much familiar with, given what goes on in the media. That is what Satan wants to have happen. He wants disorder. And there's a number of people being manipulated to do that, and are being used in the secular nature. So that's something we need to be mindful of in our own personal experience. I'm not suggesting that we go out and try to fix that, because God is going to fix that. He has made that decision. We're not here to kind of go around and try to save and try to get order back. That's not the calling that I see it. The calling is the gospel of the good news, where Christ could reign in your life, and where Christ can lift the burdens and bring order back into our own personal lives. I don't have to go around running around protesting abortion clinics or going down the border or worrying about all these things that, basically a lot of churches, even the churches that the Church of God we're familiar with, think that we have this kind of responsibility, and we don't have it. We're not being asked to do that. I guess we've emphasized that enough here on this channel. So where were we here? All right. Let's pick it up here. Verse 28. Let's pick it up here in verse 28. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So both Adam and Eve got this message, by the way. We see this here. And God said, see, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food, also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life. I have given every green herb for food, and it was so. And then God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the sixth day. And then we go to chapter 2. I'm just not going to say too much on that. And here is what happens here in the Garden of Eden. And then I'm going to probably, in this presentation, going to cut it a little shorter tonight, because it's from what I plan to do, and pick up maybe some loose ends the next time. We'll see how it goes. So we're going to go a little shorter because I'm recording this rather late, and I need to take it and compile it, prepare it, edit it, and then send it to Darren, who has to post it. And fortunately, he's an hour after us, and so hopefully it all works out. But I just wanted to get something out this week. I had great plans of doing a lot more, but it's funny how just time gets compressed. All right. Thus the heavens and the earth and all the host of them were finished. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Because it says here, now, there's a book called, or three books, but some of you may be familiar with the name of Dennis Prager, and he's one of the intellectuals of our time. He has started something called Prager University. He's a Jewish fellow, well respected in many circles, and I like him as well. But he's not a Christian, but he is someone who has a lot of wisdom that he's collected over the years, and I think he's doing a good job of in the capacity that he understands. But I have three of those books. They were gifted to me by a friend, and I've read them. Now, in the Rational Bible series, he says here, it says here, rest on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Seems simple enough, but what he points out here in the Hebrew, there is an awkwardness about this statement. It really says in the Hebrew, if you want to translate it to English, because he ceased from all his work to make. Not from all his work that he had done, because he ceased from all his work to make. And he says it's equally awkward in English as it is in Hebrew. So what does this verse mean? That's what he was talking about. And I just want to share this, because I think it has some insight. What does the verse mean that God created to make? It's kind of like God created to make. It's kind of open-ended, is one way maybe I'm looking at it. But Mr. Prager here proposes that the creation in itself is not necessarily meaningful. This creation that occurred is not necessarily meaningful. Something has to be made or furthered of what God has created. And I think that's where man comes in. This is where the human being comes in. And in the Jewish traditions, the human, and even in Christian tradition, believers are in partnership with God in furthering his will. And that was the intent all along. Because he told them to spread his image over the earth, which is be fruitful and multiply over the whole earth. That's one of them. Now we can make offspring, but we don't create offspring. We make, but we don't create. God always creates. God is only the creator. So that's something it's like there's like the eighth day, where we can start participating in it in ourselves to furthering God's will for himself, in some kind of, in a sense, a partnership with him. So it's kind of the way the Hebrew is written, is at least leaves it open-ended. Well, that's my opinion. I'm adding some of my own thoughts in terms of what Dennis Prager was saying. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. This, as I mentioned before in earlier messages, the Sabbath was the crowning day of the creation week. It's like the crown of it. There's 6 days. He's not doing those days over again, as far as I can tell. Maybe I might need to rethink that, but don't worry about that so much. But then he sanctified the Sabbath day, and there's never been more than one Sabbath day. We go back to that day every Sabbath. We're basically keeping that same Sabbath with him. It's the crowning glory of his creation. Jesus Christ himself said he created it for man. not man for the Sabbath. So essentially all people can accept this. This is given for all of us. It's given for all of us if we can just accept it and observe it. And the work that he had made, all the things that he had made, has to do, the word work there, as I understand it, it means a creation work. Creation work. And the sense is that in the Sabbath, I know that there's various approaches to the Sabbath. Some don't even, some extremes to another, whether eating out or not eating out. Some people don't want to boil water. There's some Jewish sects or even Christian sects, turning lights on and things like that, or turning the car on and collecting mail, or just all these things. But the Sabbath, you got to work it out well, I guess that's the wrong word, but you want to be able to feel rested in it of yourself in keeping the Sabbath day. And for some, it's difficult. Some people don't have jobs that, Kim and I are privileged to have weekly, 5-day-a-week jobs where I have the Sabbath, where I'm not called into going to work. There was jobs I had in the past in my professional experience, but I said I'm just taking vacation day. They wanted us to come in on Saturdays for a few weeks to make up for the break between Christmas and New Year's, so that when they can close the office. I said I'm just taking vacation days. You do what you can, and I don't judge anybody else on how they do it. It's just something that, by the grace of God, we can connect with, as long as we're able to do so. That's another discussion. And in verse 4, and I don't want to go on too much talking about the Sabbath, because you've heard enough of discussion of the Sabbath before. You don't need to hear more of it from me. This is the history of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that the Lord made the earth and the heavens. All right. I think what I'm going to do is cut this a little short here, because there's some things I want to go into here that I think that will probably, get down into some weeds that maybe we don't necessarily need to do, because I do need to get this thing, this presentation over to my brother Darren so that he can produce it and put it on YouTube. He does a lot of work and effort into doing that. And there's been some strenuous, tense times sometimes when something doesn't upload, and where there's a glitch, and then we're panicking in the middle of the night or in the morning. These things occur, and they're very real. I just wanted to, reach out and just connect a little bit more with this creation narrative, give us maybe a few more thoughts about what God is doing, and maybe hopefully it's inspiring, and have us see, what God is doing in a broader perspective. Because as we talked about, Genesis is not, as I mentioned before, Genesis is not old history. It's something that affects us to this day. There's really no disconnect between that and these origins. A lot of what happened in Genesis, throughout the Genesis, affects us this day, and there's a connection between the book of Revelation and Genesis, which I alluded to a couple of weeks ago. But I just wanted to make sure that we're, kind of making these ties together as best we can. And there's only so much one can do late on a Friday night, and after it seems like a long week, even though it was shorter week with Thanksgiving, but that somehow there's a certain busyness that occurs there as well. So with that, I am going to cut it a little short, brethren. Maybe we're only done maybe under half an hour here, but that's, I think, is plenty for us for this week. So until next time, God bless all of you. We'll see you here on Shepherd's Voice next week. Take care, and God bless you.